Hello and welcome. In today's video, we are going to show you how to solve and submit questions in Codeforces. If you are not familiar with Codeforces, take a moment to check out our previous video in which we explained it thoroughly. You can also find its link in the description. While solving a question, the first thing we need to pay attention to is the time limit per test. You might ask, what does test mean? In Codeforces, a single problem sometimes takes several test cases, which is also shown here in the input section. So here we have 1 second time limit and 256 megabyte memory limit for each test. Okay, so now if you want, you can pause this video and think about it yourself before we move on into solving it. Okay, let's read the question. You're given an array of length n, and the goal is to find the maximum average of the subarray that makes the average the highest it could be. So what we need to do here is to check every possible subarray, calculate the average, and output the maximum value. But let's see how. Before we go into the coding process, you must know that you're free to use any programming language you'd like. But since we want the most efficiency in competitive programming, we'd recommend using C++. Okay, now let's start coding. So we will start with the usual include and the main function here. You can also use this line of code here to avoid repeating the name of the library every time you use a tool from it. Now we look at the inputs. So here we will take t of type integer for the number of test cases. So we will use a while loop for that, like this. So here, this means that the code between these brackets will run exactly t times. Then, at the first line for each test case, we will take n as the number of elements in our array. Now we need to take n numbers to fill the array, so we will use a for loop like this. Of course, before that, I will have to define my array of type integer. And after that, we will fill the array with the numbers provided here for each test case. So here, we need to go and check all the possible subarrays for this question and find the maximum average. So as this definition here instructs, a subarray starts with the index L and ends with the index R with the following condition. So our L is in between 0 and n minus 1. So we make the for loop like this. And then our R should be at least 1 and at most n. Now for calculating the average, we will need to find the sum. So we can divide it by the number of elements in our subarray. So sum of type integer, and we initialize it. Then we calculate the summation using another for loop that starts from L and ends in the rth index. So here we can add every element within the subarray to the sum here. Then at the end, we will need to find the average, so we simply say int average is sum over r minus L plus 1. And it is according to this formula right here. So now we need to find the maximum average. So here, before we start our loop, we define something like an answer of type int and set it equal to 0. Then here, we use a built-in function called max to update our answer with every loop that gives a higher average. And then at the end, we have to output our answer for each test case. So we write it right here. And that should be it. So now we run our program. I will copy the sample input given here to test my program. Okay, and we have a problem. Okay, here we need R to be larger or equal to L for it to be a valid subarray. So that was my mistake here. Let's run it again and see. Okay, now look at our outputs here. For the first one is 3, second one 9, and the third output is 4. So it matches the output of the sample. Okay, now that we have the solution for our question, by clicking on this button right here, we can submit the C++ file. So go here, select the file, and submit. Okay, here I get the compilation error. So here you are able to see the verdict. If you have any kind of error in your code, or in this case choosing the wrong language while uploading, it will show you what exactly the problem is. So here I used C++, and the right option for me is either G++20 or G++23 or any of the G++ version. It doesn't really matter. So now we submit it again, choosing G++17. And yes, it shows that it is accepted. Also, I can see the process. Here you can see the test cases and see how each one went. You can also use this tab to check and debug your code and see exactly what went wrong. That would be all for today. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you again in our next video. If you enjoyed this video, follow us for more algorithm content. Subscribe to the AUS Algorithm Club on YouTube and follow us on Instagram for updates and short explanations. Thank you for watching.